this idea, I heard this a long time ago. The purpose of life is to discover your gifts. The meaning of life is to share those gifts with others. It sounds like this free and open educational system would be more conducive to that. I have, and again, I only have a 3.5-year-old. I've never done this. You're way more, you know way more about this than I. So I'm asking you for kind of my personal use here too. It seems to me what I had in mind when I said world schooling was you just take your child to different interesting cultures and show her different things, like, and go out into the world and experience real things, different cultural immersion, let's say, and then give them lots of really good books to read. And maybe the one thing I would like to instill discipline on is the reading itself, just to give them the acquired habit of reading. And then they have the ability to choose whichever direction they want once they can, basically just teach themselves whatever path their interest may lead them down. What other components am I missing there? Because it seems like if you're a well-traveled person and you're well-read, you can basically do anything in the world, right? You can open a book or turn on YouTube and just figure out how to do these things. What other components of homeschooling or world schooling do you think are very important for people?
So you're way ahead of the game because you are already an outside of the box thinker, and most of us are inside the box thinkers because we grew up in the box, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why do you think literature is important? And I can answer that if you want, but
well, I wish I had let's see. The more I learn about it, the more important I think it is. It's almost like all this programming of whatever the software we're running between our ears is, it's reflected in literature, right? Our books and our mental software seem to have a co-relationship, I'll say.
I'm so glad I asked because that's such a great analogy, I think. Good literature takes the human condition and gives us the ability to be an avatar and experience the human condition in various forms and understand better who we are and understand better the world. Bad literature is destructive, right? So, and I don't know a whole lot of new literature that I would consider good. So
Right.
I would go right back to the classics. But there's another reason to think about literature more deeply, because it's important to know history, because then you have a sense of a timeline and you know where you are on it, and you know how significant and how insignificant you are. And those are two very important things to understand. And so literature can expose us to history. So I would say you want to consider, first of all, I would always start with the Bible because there's so much wisdom and knowledge in the Bible. So that would be right part of it.
Yeah.
Literature is definitely an important component. And then there's also that part of, well, what are your daughter's interests? And your interests are cultures and traveling the world. And that may be what, turns her on, and it may not be. So I have two kids who we traveled a lot. And I got to the point where I started to really understand they're just not about travel. They really like home. They really like their friends. They really like being grounded. That's not that they don't travel. They will travel, but that's not their first thing. My husband loves to travel. He travels a lot all the time, and it's never bothered him. And I kind of fall somewhere in between. So that's something you can give some thought to. What about math? Well, math is a foreign language. So is Latin. Latin is really useful for reading literature, right?
Right.
So these are tools that can help sort of round out her experience. But at the same time, the approach of, let me just give her things and inspire this love of learning. Yes, that's exactly the approach you want, because then you'll find she's saying, Dad, I want to do some research into philosophy because this guy Socrates is interesting to me, right? And the last thing I'll say on it is that I believe that teachers today focus on asking questions to find out what the student doesn't know. And I
Hmm.
think we ought to rethink that and ask questions to find out what the student does know,
Hmm.
which is what Socrates did.
Hmm. Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so, so we can sort of rethink the way that we approach that.
It's great insights there. It's just occurring to me that, we often say live and learn, but living and learning, I mean, they are damn near the same thing, right? Like when we go
Not
out into the world,
necessarily.
well,
I mean,
I'm not saying exclusively. I'm just saying that if a life lived well is, you're hopefully learning and growing. Otherwise, it doesn't seem like
yes.
life is lived quite so well.
Right. When you add the qualifier to live well is
Yeah.
to continuously learn, I would absolutely agree. But I know a
Yes.
lot of people who stopped learning ages ago. They
Right.
got out of school, they were done. Stick a fork in
Yes.
them, they're not going to learn one more thing, and that's a hard life. A life
Right.
where you stop learning is a hard, unfulfilling.
Yes.
It's not enjoyable. I mean, look, I'm a homeschool expert, right?
Huh.
I'm still learning.
Yes.
I'm still discovering, like this whole thing about the fact that our midlife crises are virtually engineered in schools from a
Interesting.
young age.
Wow.
To me is, wackadoodle.
Yeah.
Here's another thing. Like, we're drugging young people because they have attention deficit disorder. Maybe you're just really boring, and we shouldn't be forcing young men to sit in class when they really need to be going out hunting.
I've had a
And
few of those professors.
I don't mean hunting necessarily. I just mean when they
Yeah.
really should be going outside and camping and boating,
Yeah.
rowing and all that stuff. But no, when we're forcing them to sit, when their bodies are developing into,
Yeah.
machinery, like, but they're not allowed to be using the, climbing trees and, hitting balls and
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and yet we're so readily willing to drug them with drugs that are unproven.
Mhm.
Sure, it helps in the short term. Do we know any long term? No, there have been no long term studies. No. We're just, it seems like it's fine. Just go ahead
Right.
and give them the drug. Like, to me, that's quite frightening. But that's where our science has brought us, right? Because
Mhm.
it's trust the science. And then, by the way, we're throwing science, the science that you and I understand, we're throwing
Mhm.
that out the window. Now it's just trust the
Right.
scientist.
Right. Right.
Did you see that shift, that
Yeah.
sleight of hand, that quick switcheroo?
Well, back to what we said earlier, where science is questioning, but we're saying trust the science, which is
The
translatable
opposite.
into don't
Oh, that's
question
very
the
good.
science. It's like, well, that doesn't, but science is questioning what. Oh
Yeah, that's
man.
very good.
So these,
So,
all these things seem really intertwined. We got fiat money, fiat
yes.
education. We just started talking about fiat medicine. Just this idea of trying to force people to conform to some standardized model seems to inhibit humanity overall.
It's like we're constructing a Tower of Babel.
Yeah, very
It's
much.
like you're the one who, in our original exchanges, you likened the school structure to the structure of the financial system in a sense.
Mm.
And I hadn't actually made that connection. That was big for me, and I still haven't processed it. In
Well,
fact,
yeah, I'm processing it myself. I'm just seeing more of these manifestations of mm, things that go against freedom. Like anywhere you see things going against freedom, you end up with these weird kind of pathological outcomes, right? Either the guy that's going through the midlife crisis or the person that stops learning after school. I mean,
right.
it's bad. It's de-spiriting, it's robbing us of something really important. Um, so yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I appreciate you for the work you're doing and the light you're throwing on all of this, because I had not thought of this to this extent before this conversation.
Well,
So
it's
thank you.
for instance.